A very good evening. Welcome to World Now at 4. I am Peace Ogenegbawe. First, let's talk the headlines. On the headlines, Abuja-Kaduna NRC adjusts train time schedule. Body of Zambian killed fighting in Ukraine due home. Still on the international scene, France ramps up Channel migrants patrolling. And on sport, Portugal deny captain threatened to leave World Cup squad. Now the news in detail. Nigeria's federal government and the Republic of Seychelles have formally ratified the bilateral air service agreement to operate direct flights between both countries. This follows the approval by the Federal Executive Council of the Memorandum on Signing and Ratification of the Air Service Agreement between the two countries. Minister of Aviation, Adi Sirika, using the platform of the ongoing International Civil Aviation Negotiation, which is ICANN events held in Abuja, led officials of the ministry We apologize for the break. The Minister of Aviation led officials to the ministry to sign the bilateral air services agreement, which is known as BASA, while the Republic of Seychelles Minister of Transport, Anthony de Jacques, signed on behalf of his country. During the ceremony, the two ministers underscored the importance of the BASA to promote air services and connectivity between both countries and enhance business and tourism. The two ministers agreed that the signing would further promote the African Union Agenda 2063 and called on citizens of both countries to latch onto the opportunities of the BASA for their mutual benefit. Also, ministry signed a Memorandum of Understanding and initial air services agreement with Senegal, Benin Republic, Ethiopia, Kenya, Finland, Cameroon, Morocco, Suriname, India, Sudan, and Uganda. The Nigerian Railway Corporation, that is NRC, has announced the adjustment of take-off time schedule for its last two trains from Idu in Abuja to Rigasa in Kaduna and vice versa. Pascal Nolly, the manager, Abuja-Kaduna train service, told Newsmen on Friday that the adjustments were to ensure early arrival of the trains to its destinations. According to Nolly, the trains will now depart 30 minutes earlier than its previous take-off time. The manager also says then amendments will take effect from December 12. However, he reiterated the commitment of the corporation to ensure safety of its passengers and properties on board its trains at all times. The Independent National Electoral Commission in Lagos State says 5,676,858 PVCs have been collected out of 6,630,661 received in the state from 2011 to 2021. Olusegun Agbaje, INEC REC officer for Lagos State, disclosed this at a stakeholders meeting on the collection of permanent voters' card with the leadership of political parties, civil society organizations and religious leaders on Thursday in Ikeja. According to him, anyone without PVC cannot vote in the 2023 general elections in line with the Electoral Act 2022. The Commissioner said the deadline of January 22 for the collection of PVCs became imperative to enable INEC compute the polling units by polling units records of PVCs collected.
INEC doesn't know anything about who collecting PVCs. We didn't send anybody to go and collect PVC. INEC registered people, gave them PVC. The PVC should be used next year for election, not to be given to it.
Meanwhile, Vice Chairman, East APC Lagos, Saidat Oladunjoye, and other party leaders commended INEC for good job and also asked Nigerians to collect the PVCs and vote in the upcoming elections.
What they are doing is to ensure that they don't want deploying technology to ensure that there's no hanky-panky when it comes to election, to ensure that when things are done right, we can only get better. The INEC is doing.
Lack of infrastructure has become a major concern to some rural communities in Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. In order to know the extent at which rural communities need this infrastructure, Hills TV correspondent Richard Badung took a visit to some of these areas and now reports.
Basic infrastructures are very important in human lives, just like the basic necessities of life, which include water, shelter, food, clothes, and others. In line with the Sustainable Development Goals, that is SDGs 2030 aim of reducing poverty in the world, the role of governments is being considered when it comes to provision of basic infrastructures such as hospitals, schools, roads, electricity, and other amenities that will ease the life of the populace. This is not the case in some parts of the Federal Capital Territory, that is FCT Abuja, that are known as suburbs or rural areas, otherwise known as ghetto. When Hills TV Abuja visited some of the rural areas, residents of these areas complained of the lack of basic infrastructures in the environment as they feel abandoned because they can't afford to live in the urban cities.
Like in this area now where I dey, they are doing sharing of the light. 1 day off, 1 day on. But the problem we are having is that very 1 day on that they give, they will not leave the light 24 hours.
Make the government bring money, make we do this our road. Not today for that big seat, no money. You understand? If they bring this money and I do this road, I believe this road go find where.
Efforts to meet authorities to get their own view on this matter was proved abortive. It will be recalled that the federal government of Nigeria has borrowed over $2.8 trillion for infrastructural development to help ease the pain of the poor masses, as it has not been utilized to touch the lives that were supposed to. With the presence of basic infrastructures in communities, development will easily be achieved in all aspects of life. Richard Badun, Hills TV, Abuja.
Watching Hills TV, and this is World Now at 4. When the news returns, news from other parts of Africa. Stay with us. Welcome back. The body of Zambian students Lemekani Nyirenda, who died fighting for Russia in Ukraine, is due to arrive home on Sunday. Zambia's foreign minister has announced this. Stanley Kakubo told Parliament that the body had now reached the Russian port city of Rostov-on-Don, and a Zambian diplomat would accompany it back to Lusaka. The 23-year-old died in September, but news of the death only came out last month. It left its family and the Zambian government pressing the Russian authorities for answers. Nyirenda, who had been studying nuclear engineering in Moscow, was serving a drugs-related prison sentence in Russia. His sister, Muzangalu Nyirenda, said he had been an unwitting drug courier. The foreign minister told Parliament on Friday that the Russian government confirmed Nyirenda was pardoned in August to join a military operation in exchange for amnesty. Kakubo said he was still asking the Russians for more details about the death of the young Zambian. Meanwhile, a three-member panel set up to inquire if South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and South Africa's passenger rail agency has banned preaching, gambling and informal trading in its train. The move is among measures to meant to ensure that one particular behavioral system of any other group cannot be imposed on other commuters on board. Lilian Mofonkeng, the spokesperson of the agency, says it also enhanced passenger safety and onboard cleanliness, as informal traders and preachers have opposed the new measure. We now move to other parts of the world after this break. Just stay with us. Welcome back. France says it is increasing the number of rescue boats in the English Channel to deal with growing numbers of migrants trying to reach the UK. 2 additional vehicles are being deployed in what the French Coast Guard described as an unprecedented move. It follows criticism of the French response to incidents in November 2021, in which 27 people drowned trying to cross the UK in Digne. More than 40,000 people have made such crossings this year, according to a record number, and the French Coast Guard says the Le Porose survey vessel has just arrived at the port of Calais, while Kermovan patrol ship will be there in the next few days. It says that their deployment will strengthen the Coast Guard's rescue capabilities in the Channel North Sea sector. Last month, the UK agreed to increase payments to France by £8 million more a year to £63 million to try to stop Channel crossing in small boats. It is thought French officers patrolling the coast will rise in number from about 250 to 350 over 5 months. Meanwhile, a report from the World Health Organization claims that the coronavirus pandemic interrupted efforts to control malaria, resulting in 63,000 additional deaths and 13 million more infections globally over 2 years. This report, published on Thursday, adds that cases of the disease went up in 2020 and continued to climb in 2021, although at a slower pace. Abdisalan Noor, head of GMP's Strategic Information for Response Unit, WHO, estimated that about 63,000 additional deaths and about 13 million additional cases were due to disruptions during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Disruptions of essential malaria services, and through pressure on national economies and several other disruptions, the pandemic has had an impact, even though countries have managed to prevent the worst-case scenario. Over the 2 years of the pandemic, we estimate that about 63,000 additional deaths and about 13 million additional cases were due to disruptions during the COVID-19 pandemic. The disruptions due to the pandemic continues to pose risks to malaria control. But it's important to highlight that even before the pandemic, global progress against malaria had stopped.
Africa remains the continent most affected by malaria, and according to the United Nations, last year there were 619,000 deaths from malaria and an estimated 247 million infections. 95% of these occurred in Africa. The United Kingdom has announced sanctions against 30 people worldwide, including Russian and Iranian officials, targeting those it deems responsible for acts of torture, sexual violence, and the violent repression of street protests. The move came on Friday, a day after France announced plans for new European Union sanctions against Iran over human rights abuses in its security crackdown on popular unrest there, as well as a supply of drones to Russia before Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The British government said its sanctions were coordinated with international partners to mark International Anti-Corruption Day and Global Human Rights Day. They included targets from 11 countries, including 10 Iranian officials connected to Iran's judicial and prison systems, figures involved in the Myanmar military junta, Mali's Katiba Masina group, also known as Masina Liberation Front, over what Britain said was links to sexual violence. Officials in South Sudan over what Britain said were linked to sexual violence. Those sanctions include Russian Colonel Ramil Rakhmatolovich Ibatulin for his role as the commander of the 90th Tank Division, which has been involved in fighting since Russia's invasion of Ukraine early last year. We now move to business news after this timeout. Stay with us. Welcome to Business News. The world's first C919, a Chinese-made narrow-body jet, was delivered to launch customer China Eastern Airlines in Shanghai on Friday and took off for a 15-minute flight to mark the historic moment. The plane arrived to Airbus EADSY A320neo and Boeing BA737 MAX single-aisle jet families is expected to make its maiden commercial flights next spring, according to state-owned news agencies. Industry sources have said maiden route will be between Shanghai and the capital Beijing. China Eastern said Friday it plans to receive the remaining 4 of its first batch of C919 orders over the next 2 years. That compares with earlier plans to get all 4 next year. The airline did not respond immediately to a request for comment. However, according to analysts, Commercial Aviation Corp of China is expected to produce around 25 C919s per year by 2030, far lower than the current monthly rate of narrow-body production at its rivals. We now join Aynan Lubem on Sports News. Stay with us.
Good evening and welcome to Sports News on World Now at 4. I am Aynan Lubem. The Yellow Greens of Nigeria is through to the final round of the African qualifiers for the 2024 ICC T20 World Cup in Namibia next year. Findings show that the 2024 ICC T20 World Cup is built for the West Indies and United States. The Yellow Greens secure passage into the final 4 African qualifiers along with Tanzania after securing the top 2 positions in the sub-region B qualifiers, which ends in Rwanda today. Both sides join Kenya and Rwanda in the African qualifiers in Namibia next year. Nigeria's top-of-the-table clash against Tanzania at the Gahanga Cricket Stadium, Kigali, on Thursday ended in a share of the spoils after a downpour made the surface unplayable. As a result, both countries moved up to 11 points each, with Nigeria sitting on top due to a better net run rate. The game was the second innings with Nigeria bowling just 4.3 overs. Nigeria batted in the first innings of the game and posted 101 runs for 10 wickets in 19.4 overs, leaving the Tanzanians to chase before rain ruined the game. Former Kenya's captain Victor Wanyama has decided to return to the national side just over a year after announcing his retirement from international football. The 31-year-old former Tottenham midfielder said he had decided to return to the Harambee Stars after a meeting with Kenya's Sport Minister Ababu Namwamba. Wanyama's decision comes after FIFA lifted a ban on Kenya's Football Federation after the latter was reinstated by the government after being disbanded over corruption allegation. He is the first Kenyan to play in the English Premier League, winning 64 caps and scoring 7 goals. He made his Kenya debut in May 2007 and captained the national side at the Africa Cup of Nations in 2019 when Kenya finished third in their group behind eventual champions Algeria and runners-up Senegal. The former Celtic, Southampton and Tottenham Hotspur man retired in September 2021 after being overlooked for selection during qualifying for the 2022 World Cup, which Kenya missed out after winning just 1 game of 6 group games. England defender Kyle Walker has made it clear he would not rule out a red carpet for France's Kylian Mbappe. Both countries meet in the 2022 World Cup quarter-final on Saturday. Walker is likely to start for the Three Lions and will come against Mbappe, who is the top scorer in the tournament. The duo has come up against each other 3 times at club levels when Manchester City clashed with Paris Saint-Germain. Walker has won twice and lost once. Walker said he is representing his country in the quarter-final of a World Cup, so he's not going to rule out a red carpet for Mbappe and watch him score.
Obviously, it's always going to help because I've played against him, a number of times now, as you just said, with Manchester City and PSG. But just as well as what you've just said, he's a fantastic player in great form. So it's not going to be an easy task, but it's one that, as a professional footballer, you want to play against the best. And as you just said, I think he's, one of the best, if not the best in the world at the minute. Do I understand the focus? Of course I do. I play football, so I do understand what I need to do, and that's obviously to stop him. It's probably easier said than done, but I don't underestimate myself. As we've just said there, I've played him before, and I've come against a lot of great players, in my time playing for England and also Man City and the clubs that I played for. So I have to treat it as another game. I have to take obviously extra care and give him the respect he deserves, but not too much respect because he's also playing England, and we can cause them problems. Okay,
And that's your sports news and world now at 4. Back to Peace for the rest of the news.
And that's World Now at 4. But before we go, here are the headlines again. We told you that the NRC has adjusted Abuja-Kaduna train time schedule. The body of Zambian killed fighting in Ukraine is due to come back home. France has ramped up Channel migrants patrolling. And on sport, Portugal denied that captain threatened to leave World Cup squad. Remember to visit us on Facebook and Instagram at Boss FM, at Hills TV. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Hills TV. I am Peace Ogunegbawe. Thank you for watching.